Hello and welcome to my channel. I've got another one in the quest log for you. LSS has announced the next Flesh and Blood set, High Seas. That's not coming out for another few months. So before we rush to the next best thing, I want to evaluate The Hunted, which brought a lot of new utility to the game. It's easy to look at the new shiny, majestic, and legendary tools we got with this past set. However, I want to look at the cards that flew under the radar and deserve a second look. So these are my top 5 underrated cards from the Hunted set. This first card has a really fun art and actually brings back one of our old friends that saw a ban about a couple of years back. And that card is Trot Along. Trot Along is a blue block 3 that says, your next attack with 3 or less base this turn gets go again, go again. This card comes at number 5 in my list because Trot Along is a great overall warrior card. This card is a 3 of in most warrior decks. The ability to give go again to an attack with base 3 or less fits perfectly into most of those warrior decks. It replaces cards like Precision Press, and it becomes best in slot. This card is an unconditional, 0 cost, go again. It's effectively another 3 hit and runs. And I mean, just look at this guy. He's so cool. How could you not want to put him in your deck? The card that comes in the 4th spot in this list is Null Time Zone. Null Time Zone is a blue, no block, mechanologist action item. It has Crank and says, this enters the arena with 2 steam counters. At the start of your turn, destroy this unless you remove a steam counter from it. When this enters the arena, name a card. The named card can't be pitched or played from hand while this is in the arena. This card's not higher in the list, similar to Trot Along in that it only really fits into one class or archetype, but this one specifically is the mechanologist archetype. But this card is on this list because it has some really interesting implications in the way that mechanologist players can build their decks. So first, let's talk about the aggro mechanologist player. You can play this card and name Energy, and it completely shuts down Zen. This even happened on stream at the Calling Memphis in the final rounds of the first day.
Energy is the name on the Null Time Zone, so you can see Jordan head in hands having to think about what the remainder of this next couple turns is going to spell for him. Because he knows his deck quite well and he knows the best way to value these cards. It was just looking to find the card off the top, but the Outpace is going to find a Fast and Furious, meaning another steam counter on the Inner Chi, a card from the Armory deck helping out a card from the expansion slot, and now all of a sudden Jordan Long, he is not pitching Inner Chis for quite some time.
This card also hurts any hero that runs 9-ofs. So you can drop this down at the end of your chain with 2 steam counters on it, keep it around for 3 whole turns, and your opponent can't play the most devastating cards in their deck, let alone even pitch them away. It has the potential to give your opponent an IP. This card also is good into Earth heroes, or heroes that play a lot of defensive reactions. You could drop down a Null Time Zone and name Rootbound Carapace, and turn off 5 of their devastating D-reacts in their deck, looking to decompose. Now they can throw it in their arsenal and play it from their arsenal. That's why I think this card isn't as good as it could be. However, telling your opponent that they can't play the most devastating card in their deck against you for 2, 3 turns, what I'm more interested in with this card is that it's going to open up the opportunity for more defensive mechanologists to see more play. Heroes like Tech Levasan or Dash Inventor Extraordinaire have a lot of room to play with this. Now, I don't think it's necessarily good, but man, would it be really funny to start a game playing against a Zen with this in the arena, naming Inner Chi. So for the first 3 turns, they can't transcend. I just love the potential for this card, and I see a really bright future for it. I love when cards offer players new tools and opportunities to play their favorite heroes in new and exciting ways. This 3rd card in the list has a very high ceiling, but man, does it also have a very low floor. This card is Put Into Context. Put in Context is a blue block 3 generic defense reaction, and it says, this can only defend an attack with 3 or less base. When this card works, it works, and it's an incredible card. A blue block 3 that can block in the reaction step, but when it fails, ouch. Right now, this card is relevant into most of the meta. First off, it's a blue, so it works into Rune Blades. Maybe you can't block their attack, but you can pitch it to block the Rune Chance. And most Rune Blades in this meta are running base 3 power or less weapons. This card works into Enigma. Most auras have a base 3 power or less. This card is great into ninjas. Ninjas are running Head Jab City right now. You could utilize it in Brutes. blocking claws. Warriors, almost all of their weapons are base 3 or less. Where this card shines the most is into the assassin matchup. Almost every single devastating card for assassins are base 1. Bonds of Agony, Persuasive Prognosis. Having a blue block 3 that can allow you to call your opponent's bluffs is very powerful. And look, you could always just side it out of your bad matchups. There's really only 2 or 3 matchups where it doesn't see play. You could end up with a challenging position if you have 2 of these in your hand and your opponent plays an attack that you can't use these to block. However, I would rather run this card as a blue block 3 in my deck over some other really lame and stinky blue block 3s that exist in this game, especially the overpriced one. Man, the top 2 underrated cards in this list, they're really close together, but I have to give the edge to the number 1 spot because the number 2 spot I think is best as a 2 of instead of a 3 of in this current meta. So the card I think that is the second most underrated card in the Hunted set is Sound the Alarm. Sound the Alarm is a generic attack action that costs 1 and blocks 3 and attacks for 5. It says, when this attacks a hero, they reveal their hand. If an attack reaction card is revealed this way, you may search your deck for a defense reaction card, reveal it, then shuffle, and put it on top. This is an incredible card for 3 reasons. Information, information, information. Subtract a tutor effect. This is a 1 for 5 that blocks 3, that gives you information that could destroy half of the meta. This card reveals bluffs. It lets you count your opponent's lines. You could study your opponent's hand and learn what their arsenal target's gonna be. On top of all of that, this thing is a tutor that grabs the most valuable defense reaction that you need in that moment at the exact time you want it. For heaven's sake, in the ninja class, this thing could tutor a Zen state. This is a rare card and I love it so much. There have been so many other cards printed in the rare slot that were just missing that 3 block. And the fact that LSS printed Sound the Alarm, putting it in, giving it 3 block and making it so relevant is an awesome thing. I'm a big fan of the Clash format. This card's gonna go in some of my Clash decks. It's good enough to be in CC. I don't see that many people talking about this thing and it deserves more conversation. The final card on this list, I think, is the most underrated card in all of the Hunted, strictly because of this meta. This thing is so useful into more than half the classes in this game. The number 1 card on this list is Calming Breeze. Calming Breeze is a rare, generic instant that costs 0 and says, the next 3 times you would be dealt damage this turn, prevent 1 of that damage. This card is a 3 of. If you don't believe me, this card is Shelter's secondary effect, which is an $80 card. This card is on rate. It blocks 3. It helps you to stop breakpoints on cards like Snatch and CNC. If you have a D-React in your hand, this card can stop all 1 for 5 breakpoints. This card cuts off Mass Trigger. Everybody playing a Syndra this weekend is gonna wish they had this card in their deck so that they could stop Flick Knives from carrying the momentum from Mask of Momentum. This card is great into Rune Blades. This card gets around deal damage cards. If you see 2 of these in your hand, it's not terrible, especially if your opponent is going 3 wide. You could just play both of them and they block 6 from 3 different sources. This card allows you to utilize your hand to turn every card in your hand into a 4 block if you have to. This card could let you block all those 4 blocks, maintain a 2 card hand and send back a 3 for 7 or 3 for 8. This card just makes every other card in your hand so much more efficient and it's so useful in this current meta full of Rune Blades, ninjas and flickers and whispers and whatever it is that everyone else is sending at each other. And I think one of the best parts about this card is that it's an instant. It gets around all of the timing reactions that you need it to. And you could do some really fun shenanigans by playing it from Arsenal if you're smelling a CNC for 7 from Ira. Like if she goes Kadachi, you could play this from Arsenal and then what's left for her to do? Here's CNC for 7, but I guess it's really only gonna do 6 damage now. Maybe you block from a card from hand. I personally love those instant shenanigans and tricking people into thinking they got you when they don't. The fact that nobody is truly talking about this card just baffles me. It is such a great card. It's a great budget option, and I think that you should be running maybe 2 of these even if you do have the 3 shelters. And those are my top 5 underrated cards from the Hunted list. What cards do you think are underrated? Do you disagree with any of my points? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe.